When we talk about the rise of British New Wave, the story is often told as something that happened almost entirely at home. A handful of bands, a few studios, and suddenly synthesizers replace guitars on the charts. But music history is rarely that simple. In the late 1970s, ideas were already moving across borders. Records travelled, musicians listened closely, and in some cases artists worked together long before those sounds became familiar to a wider audience. In that exchange, one Japanese group played a far more important role than is often recognised, and that group was Yellow Magic Orchestra, formed in Tokyo in 1978. The trio consisted of Haruomi Hosono, Ryuichi Sakamoto, and Yukihiro Takahashi. Each came from a different musical background, but they shared a fascination with how modern technology could be used creatively, not as a novelty and not as a gimmick, but as a serious musical language. What made Yellow Magic Orchestra stand out was not just their sound, but their outlook. They were not trying to imitate Western rock or disco, and they were not chasing existing chart trends. Instead, they created a form of fusion music that blended electronic instruments with rhythm and melody, drawing ideas from many sources at once. Traditional influences, modern culture, precision, atmosphere, and a subtle sense of humour all existed side by side. Their music felt futuristic, but it was never cold. It was carefully structured, yet still human, and perhaps most importantly it showed that electronic instruments could form the centre of a band, rather than sitting quietly in the background. When their first album appeared in 1978, it attracted attention beyond Japan, not because it followed familiar rules, but because it suggested a different future, one where technology and creativity were not in conflict, but working together. For musicians in Britain, especially those emerging from the post-punk scene, this mattered. By the end of the 1970s, many British artists were searching for new directions. Guitars were still present, but they no longer felt essential. There was a growing interest in atmosphere, texture and mood, and in presentation as part of the music itself. Music was becoming about identity as much as sound. Yellow Magic Orchestra offered a clear example of how that shift could work. They did not present electronic music as something distant or difficult. They made it feel confident, stylish and modern, and that confidence travelled. This is where the story moves beyond distant influence, because the connection between Yellow Magic Orchestra and Britain was not only indirect, it became personal. One of the most important bridges between Japan and the UK at this moment is the British band Japan. Japan were already moving away from conventional rock structures as the 1970s came to an end. Their music became more spacious, more restrained, and more concerned with detail. They were interested in sound as atmosphere, and in presentation as part of the music itself. On their 1980 album Gentlemen Take Polaroids, there is a track titled Taking Islands in Africa, which features Ryuichi Sakamoto on keyboards. That single credit tells us a great deal, because it shows that British musicians were not simply inspired by Yellow Magic Orchestra from a distance. They were actively working with them, learning from them, and inviting them directly into their music. By 1982, this relationship deepened further. That year, Sakamoto and Japan's vocalist David Sylvian released Bamboo Houses alongside an instrumental companion piece titled Bamboo Music. At the time, Sylvian was still a member of Japan, and Sakamoto was still part of Yellow Magic Orchestra. This was not a nostalgic collaboration looking backwards. It was part of the same moment in which new wave, synthpop and electronic fusion music were still forming their identity. The music itself sits neatly between worlds. Sylvian's reserved and reflective vocals are set against Sakamoto's carefully shaped electronic framework, creating something that feels international, modern, and quietly confident. What matters most here is that this was not a one-way exchange. British musicians were not simply borrowing a sound, there was a genuine dialogue taking place. That dialogue continued in 1983 with Forbidden Colours, written by Sakamoto for the film Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, with lyrics and vocals by David Sylvian. The song remains one of the clearest examples of how Japanese and British musical sensibilities could meet without either losing its identity. At this point, the connection between Yellow Magic Orchestra and the British scene becomes impossible to ignore. To understand why this worked so well, it helps to look more closely at the three members of YMO themselves. Hiromi Hosono can be seen as the conceptual heart of the group. He was deeply interested in how different musical traditions could exist together, and how modern music could reflect a changing world. His thinking helped shape Yellow Magic Orchestra as more than just an electronic group, but as a cultural project as much as a band. Sakamoto became the most internationally recognized member. His background in composition gave him a strong sense of structure, while his curiosity led him toward collaboration across borders. He moved easily between electronic music, film, and art, making him a natural bridge between different scenes and countries. Yukihiro Takahashi brought balance and clarity. With his background as a drummer and vocalist, he helped ground the music, and his sense of timing and presentation kept Yellow Magic Orchestra focused, accessible, and rhythmically strong. Together they created something unusually complete, thoughtful without being academic, modern without being alienating. This balance was exactly what many British new wave and new romantic artists were searching for as the 1980s began. They were not simply interested in new sounds, but in new identities, new ways of standing on stage, and new relationships between music, image, and technology. Yellow Magic Orchestra demonstrated that this was possible. They showed that electronic instruments could lead a band, shape its character, and still communicate emotion. That technology did not remove feeling but could refine it. So when British synthpop and new wave began to dominate the charts in the early 1980s, it did not appear from nowhere. It grew out of a wider international conversation that crossed borders and quietly connected artists who recognized something familiar in each other's work. This is why Yellow Magic Orchestra matter in this story. Not as an isolated Japanese phenomenon and not as a footnote to British music history, but as part of the foundation, a group who helped make electronic and fusion-based music feel viable, expressive, and forward-looking at a crucial moment. Synthpop and new wave was not born in a single city or country. It developed through exchange, curiosity, and collaboration, and Yellow Magic Orchestra, through their music and their direct connections with British artists like Japan and David Sylvian, were a key part of that process.